Hello, my name is Kelly Kirkpatrick, and I'd like to address this video to the libertarian movement, especially since I was inspired to do so by a video by Stefan Molyneux, who was decrying the tragedy of war and the and exclaiming the desperation that he's always felt for explaining why on Christmas Day of 1915 the troops in the trenches suddenly stopped what they were doing, stopped destroying themselves, and decided to be friends for a day. Stefan was desperate for an explanation for that, and I pretend to have an explanation for why that happened, but he was also desperate for the universal principle of peace creating effect. And I think when we look at human beings from the intellectual level, we can't understand human beings. Human beings are very special, as it says in the Bible, and I'm saying this knowing well that Stefan and Walter Block and Murray Rothbard were all atheists, that the Bible says man is made in the image of God. And in the Vedic literature it says Jivo Brahmaiva Naparaha. The individual is cosmic and none other. Or yata pinde tata brahmande. That which is little is cosmic. But in the case of the human nervous system, it's very special. It's not an animal nervous system, except in some regards, but it's a nervous system which can experience the total value of natural law on the level of consciousness, not on the level of the intellect. And the intellect is part of our consciousness. It's the subtlest part next to the ego. It's the eightfold prakriti, the eightfold nature of the mind, as described by Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, throughout the Vedic literature. And if you know anything about the research on transcendental meditation, you know that it's the most researched self-development technique in the world. And I started out with a lot of doubt about what it was. I used to study Bill Buckley, and National Review didn't like transcendental meditation. They didn't like the TM movement. They made fun of it and stuff, and Buckley did too in '68 in a editorial. But the intellect is the key. The transcending the intellect is the key. Transcending the small self, the small ego, is the key, and that's what human beings have the capacity to do. And because of that, there are advanced techniques of transcendental meditation that allow one to that have the effect on society as a whole. Even TM itself has that effect, but it's much more powerful with the advanced techniques of the transcendental meditation and TM Siddhi program. As it says in the Vedic literature, Tat Sanidhau Vaira Tyagaha. In the vicinity of coherence, hostile tendencies are dissolved. And now you see this YouTube here of John Hagelin, PhD from a quantum field theorist from Harvard, very highly cited quantum field theorist, very advanced, very much on the frontier, especially 20 years ago, 25 years ago, in unified superstring theory and grand unified theory. He had quite a good grand unified theory that was consistent with the standard model of physics. But he deduced it from the superstring, from the unified field theory. That was a little different way that he went about it. But anyway, the scientific research, the sociological research, the time series analysis research shows that we can actually get the effect that Stefan Molyneux wants. And we can get it just like turning on a light switch. It's just a matter of getting the number of us who have these advanced programs together. And so you have this research that's been done, and it's been published in 25 very highly acclaimed peer-reviewed journals, as Dr. Hagelin will mention. In the Yale University Journal of Conflict Resolution was where the seminal study was made. But there's been about 25 published and about 50 done, or maybe 55 or 60, just continuing over the years. So let me show you what Dr. Hagelin has to say. Let me show you the specifics of the research, of the highlights of the research, that is.
I'm going to show you very quickly some of the early research. This is the first study, and I won't go into it in great detail except to say that this experiment was performed in the Middle East during the peak of the Lebanon War in the early 1980s. It was hypothesized, based on many previous smaller experiments, that if enough people were collectively experiencing and stimulating this fundamental, powerful field of peace within, that there would be a radiated influence of peace that would affect the behavior of people throughout society. People would wake up in the morning and they'd decide, hey, I don't think I'm going to kill anybody today. What a novel thought. That, with some expanded comprehension and less narrowly cramped, narrowly self-centered, acutely stressed vision, that those desperate acts of terrorism simply don't really have a fertile field to fall on. So this chart shows a dotted line going up and down, which is the rise and fall on a daily basis of the number of people who were meditating as a group in Jerusalem. About 1,000 people on average, sometimes more, sometimes less. And the solid line represents progress towards peace in the war in neighboring Lebanon. And even before the benefit of statistical analysis, you can almost see from the raw data that progress towards peace, measured by reduced war deaths, reduced war injuries, reduced number of bombs, that progress towards peace goes up and down almost in lockstep with the number of people who were meditating as a group, radiating this influence of inner peace to become outer peace. When this was subject to mathematical analysis, the likelihood that this is simply due to some fluke, due to chance, is less than 1 part in 10,000. To be able to say something with this certainty that group meditation prevented war, that is a really remarkable finding. When this was published in the Yale University Journal of Conflict Resolution, it ignited a firestorm. First of all, it took 2 years to publish the paper because the editors reviewed it and reviewed it and reviewed it, and they said in the end, this paper is unassailable. This paper was performed at a standard of scientific rigor far beyond that required for publication in any journal. So they had to publish it, but they published it with a letter. And the letter in the journal said, the results of this experiment are so unexpected that 1,000 people could influence the behavior of 1,000,000, that they urged other scientists to go out and repeat the study. And that's exactly what happened over the next 2¼ years. 7 other scientific collaborations went out and repeated the study, training and assembling groups of meditators, practicing transcendental meditation. And in every one of these experiments, during this 2¼ year period, there was a marked reduction in violence and war. 80% drop in war deaths and war-related injuries in comparison to all the other days during the 2¼ years where there were no meditating groups, when the situation grew slightly worse, as this chart shows, in comparison to 7 highly positive bars showing highly statistically significant progress towards peace in every single experiment. If you put these together, the likelihood that this reduction of war was again simply due to chance and not due to the meditating groups was less than 1 part in 10 million. There is far more evidence that group meditation can turn off war like a light switch than there is evidence that aspirin reduces headache pain, for example. It is a scientific fact.
So, I've always been a passionate libertarian, and I've always practiced my transcendental meditation program. And Dr. Hagelin said transcendental meditation, but it's really the advanced program that is much more powerful. It has a quadratic effect, an exponential effect compared to just TM alone, when especially in practiced in groups. The coherence created in the brain, as Dr. Fred Travis explains in this video, is unique for transcendental meditation and for the TM Cities program, including the yogic flying program. All of this comes from the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, but it took Maharishi Mahesh Yogi to bring it out in its purity so that it has the effect that we want. And so I encourage you to look into this at tm.org, at Transcendental Meditation, and at Maharishi University of Management. And these kinds of things here, like these guys, are interesting, but they don't really have the knowledge in its pure form. And but they, have really good insights into things. But all this research is incredible. It's the most researched self-development technique in the world, but specifically to solve this problem, this terrible problem of war. And from our perspective, as libertarians, the problem of government, anarcho-capitalists in my case, it should solve that problem as well. Although, there's this community, in fact, was the only county. This county was the only county in the country besides Nye County, Nevada, where Maharishi University Management is, which voted for Ron Paul. It was also strong for Obama, but I think I would attribute that to a sentiment, not to real insight into the way government works and the way the individual works and the way economics works. So it's quite a fantastic community that has been created here 30, 40 years ago, and it's going to be quite I would just love for libertarians to look into this so that they could have a more of a consciousness-based perspective rather than the intellectual insights that they have, which are very profound. I mean, Mises, and I think Mises is really great, his Kantian perspective. But Maharishi's perspective is more, is completely direct. It's not that there's a separation between the knowledge and the experiencer, and that's the key right there, and that's the reason for the effect. Let me get off now. Thank you.